One of our first customers was Gab Wireless, and we didn't even have a product. We didn't spend enough time looking at what pricing said about what our product meant. We just said yes to anyone willing to pay. You can sell anyone a solved problem, but you actually have to solve the how. You know, we've gone back and forth on Twitter quite a bit, so it's always fun to
Yeah, we have.
actually have a conversation and chat.
Going back and forth on Twitter's fun. I don't know how you do it, man. I'm like, how does this guy have this much time to be on Twitter?
So what happens is I'll rapid fire get on and I'll rapid fire do 10 replies, and I'm sure it just pops up on people's feed throughout the
Yeah.
day. But I don't know. Any chance I get, I'm on it. That's for sure. Which is probably a good and a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, dude, there's so much I want to talk about. I know we have a short amount of time, but take me through your career up until this point.
Yeah. So it's funny. So I graduated from UVU. I guess I should have probably gotten more mentors and stuff during school. I graduated and I started applying for jobs and was struggling to get a job because I just thought that a diploma was oh, as soon as you have this, anyone will take you. And it's kind of
Same.
not the case. So I just started asking different people for free work. And Signal Peak at the time, they were doing diligence on Divvy. And McKay Dunn there was hey, dude, if you by chance want to help us do diligence on this company, you can put that you did a project for us on your resume. And I was sick. So we did that. I put it on my resume, and then at the same time passed level 1 of this thing called the CFA program, which is a financial analyst program. So between those two things, I was able to start American Express and commercial underwriting. So at American Express, I would get a credit application from a business, review it, and decide if we'd approve them or not. What's funny is right after I finished up my little project for Divvy for Signal Peak, I stayed in contact with Blake, and I was just hey, Blake, I'd love to work here. I think it's super cool what you're building. And he was yeah, we're only hiring for engineers. We don't really need anyone in risk or finance. But I just stayed on him for a year, every month on the dot, reach back out. It just so happened that at the time, I didn't really get it, but that my experience at American Express lined up perfectly with what they would need eventually, which was eventually they needed someone to come in and actually do the underwriting because they were a credit card company that was trying to approve credit for different, small, medium-sized businesses and startups. So started at Divvy in underwriting, and then very quickly was hey, I don't know if I want to be in risk my whole life. And so I ultimately decided to make a switch to just corporate finance, FP&A. And that was way more fun because we do everything from board decks, resource planning, fundraising, just kind of across the board, everything finance. Did that for 5 years. Then after that, after the acquisition from Bill, I was there for an extra 2 years. And then right around February, March, April, that 2023, that's when I started getting the itch to do something. I happened to go to a startup event where some investors, and again, I'm learning that investors just tell people all the time, but they're dude, you'd be really good at building. You should quit your job and start something. And so I was sick. And so the next day I quit my job and I went and started putting a deck together of an idea. Luckily, having worked at Divvy did provide me somewhat of a halo effect for how early I started. And so again, investors are just kind of underwriting every founder to be okay, can he learn? Can he learn quick? How fast is he going to move? Can this person figure it out? And having a solid window under your belt helps you do that. And so having the Divvy gave me a somewhat of a halo effect to where when I quit and I started fundraising, that evening I already had $200K wired. And anything with fundraising, it's if people already feel it's happening without them, then it makes it very easy for the rest of the round to come together. Even though the rest of the round still took work to get up and running. I mean, at the same time, it was well, hey, for 200K, it's if I pay myself 60K a year, it's 3 years worth of runway.
Yeah.
Then started working closely with Tyler and Clint, and then we decided we needed about closer to 2 million. So we went and raised the remaining amount, built that for 3 years, and then yeah, stepped down as of last Friday. So currently just unemployed.
Holy cow, there's so much in there. Okay, let's go back to where you had that 200K wired. You basically built a deck, and then they were okay, here you go.
I don't know. It's funny. I kind of view this a lot like dating, where it's and it's funny because dating's the most relevant analogy to fundraising because it's either the vibes are there or they're not.
Yeah.
And the reality is that most people are in a relationship where the vibes actually aren't there, but there's positive signal of oh, this guy's good looking though, and he's sharp and he has a good future ahead of him. And so you stay with him because you're oh, well, my life will be good because this person can do X, Y, or Z. So with fundraising pre-seed, it's very much just all vibes. At least the good investors are all vibes. And they're just do I like Renato? So an example was Trent. He volleyed me after a cold LinkedIn DM. Between like 2 days from when the first volley came and the second volley, he just liked the progress and he was like, wow, like if Renato keeps working like this every day, like where could Parallel get to? Where could he get to? So he was like, well, I also need to get in right now because if he has nothing, then I have some sort of flexibility to set a price that I want. And like a lot of people like being able to say that they were the first check in. Trent was the first check in. And so it was like 3 or 4 volleys over a few days where he was like, okay, I vibe with Renato. I've seen that he works and he has a halo effect. Like again, it's like all made up. No one knows anything. So you really only have that to go off of it. And it was enough for Trent to be like, okay, I'm going to wire you the money.
What is it about you? Is it just your personality, your go-getter attitude that makes it so you can do that where other founders struggle to get a pre-seed round together and they built an actual product?
Yeah, I think the most common mistake I see, or I think the reason why is investors had confidence that I'd be able to sell. That I'd be able to sell whatever it is that we built,
Yeah.
that I'd be able to tell a good story because selling is all about telling a good story, a story that your customers believe, that investors will believe, that employees will believe. And so I think the hardest, like the thing that maybe investors saw in me was like, okay, Renato can sell a story. And if Renato can sell a story, then that means he can recruit really good talent. And if he can recruit really good talent, there's a chance that he's going to be able to also sell. And so I think like the common mistake I see is like a lot of founders think, oh, if I do X, Y, or Z, then an investor will be interested in me. And again, going back to like the dating analogy, it's like someone is like, okay, as long as I'm like fit, finish school, and have a job, anyone will want to marry me. And it's like, well, no, that's not true at all. Like you might just suck at dating. You might like suck at planning. You might suck at making that person laugh or whatever it is. It's the same thing with fundraising. One of the strengths that I have is like, I feel like I have an ability to get people to believe in whatever I'm telling them. It's actually been like one of those things that my friends have given me crap over the years where year one of our friendship, anything that I would say, they would just believe. And I'd be like, oh yeah, the majority of Americans that do X or the majority of whatever do Y. And they would never fact check me. And then like over time, they'd be like, oh, you know what? You said the majority. And I looked it up and it's only like 55%. And I'm like, well, that's still the majority. Like, oh, well, when you said majority, I thought you meant like 80 or 90%. And I'm like, and so I tend to be very, I can get someone to believe a lot of BS. And that's like, I would say, maybe like one of the skills is because like you have to convince a customer that your half-baked product is better than whatever that they're using right now. Because like honestly, like it's like nonsensical for like think Adobe for like a 25 or 28-year-old kid to call them and be like, hey, you should use this product that I've been building for 3 months. In order for them to like believe that, they have to be really good at selling a story. So I think investors were just like, okay, like Renato has the ability to just like sell people something that may or may not exist yet and get people on board.
Were you able to do that with Parallel? Were you able to sell customers?
For sure. I mean, honestly, like one of our first customers was Gab Wireless, and we didn't even have a product, and they signed an annual contract. And
Wow.
there was like 4 months that they paid us before a product even existed, right? And it's just because they're just like, oh, this is cool. And it's almost like it's funny because your first customers are almost paying to just be part of a ride that isn't even built yet. They're just like, hey, I want to like it's like pre-ordering something,
Yeah.
but
The idea
yeah.
is so good. They need that you're solving the pain so well for them. They're like, "Yes, we're willing to pay ahead."
But in some cases, you're not even solving anything yet because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's kind of just like pre-selling in general, which like pre-orders are just like, it's kind of like movies, right? It's like Christopher Nolan like released tickets a year early for the Odyssey. And it was just like a good indication of just like, hey, we did this. How many people would buy? Are there more theaters that we should make sure that the movie gets into? And so even though like no one's seen it, no one knows, but people already paid, like they're already out of their money, right? And so
Yep.
it's very similar. It's like we were able to sell Gab Wireless a product that wasn't functioning in any way, shape, or form, but they wanted to be a part of the process. So they're just like, sick. Yeah, I want to be here. It's like, just like I know like Christopher Nolan is abusing me to get this money just to be able to figure out how many more like theaters they want to get into, how many more rooms they want to get into. And I'm like, I'm down for that because I'm a fan
Yeah.
and I want to see him succeed.
So, I'm a big fan of pre-selling things like sell, then build, but how have you navigated that with your team? Are they like, "Whoa, you're pre-selling everything, super fast and we don't have anything built." Is customer support having a hard time keeping up with customer expectations because it's not
Oh,
quite
for
there
sure.
yet?
It's all like this big, massive circular reference. And I mean, it's hurt us a lot, right? Because I think the mistake is when you're pre-selling, you have to define what is the first thing that you're going to sell and what you're going to build. I think the mistake is being like, okay, would you buy it if it had a Stripe integration? Okay, great. We'll make sure it has it. Like, it's almost like you're pre-selling an idea and then fleshing out the features with the customer, hoping that they will buy, and you're almost like relying on the customer to tell you the feature set instead of saying, I understand your pain and this is how I'm going to solve it. And this is the feature set that we're going to provide to solve it. And you're either going to like agree with how we're solving the problem or not. I think the problem is you can sell anyone a solved problem, but you actually have to solve the how, right? Like, because then if not, then you get like in really big trouble as far as just like, you don't know what you're building.
Yeah. And did you have any problems with that where customers churned and then you're now
Oh,
worried
for sure,
about
dude.
your
I mean,
GDR and
we had to churn like 30% of our customers in early 2025 because we kind of got caught between we started fundraising. It took longer than we expected, but we couldn't take our foot off the gas because the worst thing that can happen during a fundraise is to show that
yep.
growth slowed down. So we were just like, okay, we have to sell at all costs. So we got on a call with the customer and there was like one thing missing from them to say, yes, we would promise it. And then, 3 or 4 months later, we built it. It's hacky. It's not good. It doesn't solve the problem. Then they churn.
And that's got to affect your next fundraise, right?
Yeah, I mean, luckily we were able to finish the fundraise. And so like sometimes you just like buy yourself enough time to correct all the mistakes that you made.
Okay. So you've bought yourself enough time to correct all the mistakes that you've made. Do you change anything going forward to say like, okay,
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're always like changing. You're always trying to figure out like, okay, how can we get better at narrowing? How can we get better at defining? How can we get better
yeah,
at scoping? How can we get better? Like early on, it was like, hey, Nate, um, this is the pain you have. Here's how we're thinking about solving it. And then we'd leave and we'd build it. And then we'd come back and we'd always be missing something. So then I was like, okay, what we need to do is we actually need to like define the doc better. So then we'd leave the room and be like, hey, Nate, can you review this? Like, does this make sense? It's like, yes, great. Then we'd go and build it, and then we'd come back, and then there'd still be things missing because once you saw it, you'd have all these other ideas. So then it was like, okay, let's go to like even further now. It's like, here's the doc, here's the initial designs, and then here's a timeline. Does that line up when you would expect it to be done? So it's like you're always like the whole like cell design build. It's like good in practice, like good in theory, but in practice is actually a lot harder because it's almost like it's like sell, define, design, build. It's like you have to
yeah,
really define what you're selling in a
yeah,
way that then you can design around it. And then it's almost like sell, define, design, sell, and then build, right? Because it's almost
yeah.
like you sell it, you design it, you define it, and then you go back and confirm that that's what you sold. And then once that's true, then you can go back and build it.
Yeah, much easier to say than to do for sure. I love just hearing the iterations that you guys have gone through in the process. That's super fun and it tells me a lot about how you guys work, which is awesome. Okay, so you got the 200K wired, you're building this thing. Where did you guys get to before you decided to step down?
We just got under 1 million in ARR.
Tell me a little bit about the product. It's a software that helps you manage runway.
Yeah, we just wanted to build something that made it really easy to answer the what ifs that's constantly on a founder's mind. So if a founder wants to know, hey, how does runway change if I make one more hire? How does runway change if we change our pricing? How does runway change? Because like runway isn't this fixed number, it's constantly changing and it's changing like every day based on like what's happening. And especially at a startup where, for example, let's say today someone quits on your team and you're like, okay, I'm going to backfill him really quickly. But now you're actually thinking it's like, oh, well, this person was like 150K a year. So fully burdened 170K. So it's like 15K per month is what this employee costs. And you're like, okay, well, now that he's gone, maybe we have an opportunity to think about this problem differently. Do we actually want to backfill with like a contractor? And it's like, okay, well, how much would the contractor be? And it's like, oh, well, it's a contractor in Ukraine. He's going to be like 4 grand a month. And it's like a senior. And so it's like, okay, now we're saving 10 grand a month. And so over a year, that's 120K. And if your net burns 120K, you just added a month of runway, right?
Mhm.
Or you might view it a little bit differently and say, hey, now that we lost him, we want to backfill with 2 headcount. So we just built a product that we wanted to solve the issue, which is finance tends to be this very like overcomplicated. People get intimidated by working in Excel. So we're like, hey, can we actually put a real user experience on top of modeling? Because up until this point, everyone that had tried to solve this problem had been trying to solve the problem by beating Excel. And the only way to beat Excel, at least at that point, was, oh, we just have to be like even more complicated, have even more advanced calculations, more advanced functions. And we
Mhm.
had kind of the opposite approach, which is just like, oh no, we actually believe that to beat Excel, you have to build it with actually like an actual experience. So think, for example, like the way that we would add headcount in our product, if you wanted to adjust someone's start date, you'd think like, oh, in Excel, you'd have to manually change like the start date. We actually had like a timeline view where every hire was like a block and you could push it out or bring it in or pause it. And so then it's like, oh, you're actually not interacting with formulas, but you're seeing the math change for you in real time.
How do you price something like that?
Just by guessing what people are willing to pay for it over and over and over again. I mean, it's interesting because like fractional CFOs can charge as much as like 10 to 20K per month. So we always had this like internal battle of like you had the prize of the world, which tried to build a version of this, but it's like $100 a month. Now it lacked like 90% of the feature set that we have, but for like your average founder, they might just be like, oh, like this works, like it's not a big deal.
Mhm.
It's almost like I don't know how familiar you are with like Tremendous versus Sendoso, right? Like Tremendous, it's like, here's a quick virtual gift card. It's so easy. And it costs like almost no money. Then all of a sudden Sendoso is like, oh, we can make it super nice with your branding and all this. And,
Mhm.
and it's just like, okay, well, we only ever used Tremendous because like I didn't care to like brand a DoorDash
Yep.
gift card that I'm sending you. I would say it's almost like kind of that perspective where we had other companies that were like way more simple. And for some founders, they might think that that's enough. But we had this kind of like, okay, well, how do we price ourselves when a founder views an option that's $100 a month? It doesn't give them the answers that they need, but the founder also doesn't know what answers they need yet. In the early days, it was like, okay, hey, let's try pricing ourselves half as a fractional CFO. So if a fractional CFO is 5 grand a month, let's try 2,500. It's like, okay, well, everyone keeps saying no to that. It's like, oh, well, because maybe they haven't talked to fractional CFOs yet, so they don't know that the price is 5 grand. So what is the right entry point? We landed at like a base minimum of $500 a month.
Mhm.
And then pricing was actually very helpful because you don't want to say no to revenue. And that's kind of like one of the hardest things as a founder is to be like, no, no, no. But I think that pricing helps you learn a lot about who your customer is and why. Because like in the early days, it was like, oh, okay, fine. Like Nate asked for it to be $300 a month. And so we're just like, okay, let's just do it. But then over time, you're just like, wait, like the pain might just not be big enough
Yeah.
because like, or it teaches you what characteristics are more true of the customers that you want. And you're like, okay, well, why is Nate only willing to pay $3 a month? It's like, oh, well, he bills monthly via Stripe, so there's not a lot of complication to his forecast, so he doesn't get it yet. But then all of a sudden you might talk to a founder that's like, dude, we just signed our first quarterly contract and annual contract, and I have no idea how runway gets affected by these different like billing structures. And I'm willing to just like pay anything to get it done. It's interesting because pricing is like this like treasure chest of just like information on how painful is a product, what are the characteristics of people that are willing to pay 1,000 versus ones that are paying 500. I think that we just like one of the mistakes that we made too early was we just said yes to anyone willing to pay, and we never stepped back and said, okay, like what's the difference between the $200 a month customer versus a $500 a month customer? And are the differences clear enough that we could target separately? Are the differences mature enough that we focused on the $500 a month customer that it could get big enough? And at the end of it, we had customers paying 5 grand a month in some cases. I'd say like a mistake that we probably made is we didn't spend enough time looking at what pricing said about what our product meant.
Yeah. This is a great segue because I was gonna ask who became your ideal customer?
Our ideal customer was any startup with at least one or two sales hires. And the reason why is like, if you're actually hiring for sales, that means like a company that isn't growing doesn't need our product because runway isn't changing. Runway is only changing if you're really adding cost, but you're only really adding cost if revenue's growing. And so the best indicator for us was like, okay, if Nate has like one AE or one SDR or something like that, then revenue's growing and anything could change like on a weekly or monthly basis to where he does want to have answers where if one of his reps close a 200K account, he might pull the trigger and immediately go hire two more SDRs or something like that.
I mean, those are still very nascent businesses and have a very high probability of not making it. Was that a problem for you guys in terms of customer churn because their businesses was just not working?
We only ever had like one customer go out of business in the
Wow.
entire time that we were as a company. I think the sales aspect helped a lot because it was almost like the I would say the difference is like think about Carta. Or I guess like a lot of startup like founders get distracted with the wrong thing very quickly. They're just like, oh hey, I need to like open up a bank account or I need to do this or I need to do that. It's very busy work. And so with those companies that target start like for example, like an AISDR tool or an outbound reach tool, these are like notorious for like startup churn because
Yeah.
they're just guessing. I would say that, like, we saw that there was a huge decrease in failures at startups if they started hiring for sales, and then also kind of a marker was, like, they had to have at least 2 to 300K in ARR. So at least, like, what we found is if you have 2 to 300K in ARR and you have a salesperson that's closing consistently, your rate of, like, winning was exponentially higher.
Interesting. Sounds like a good data set to go invest in.
Yeah, but that's also an interesting thing, though, because it's like, I it's at the earliest stage, you don't wanna go off of data, right? Because like, that's the wrong type of investing, at least my perspective, right?
In
Which
your
is
perspective, yeah.
because it's like, if you're investing on a sure thing, then you're only gonna get like a 10, 20, 30% return. But I mean, if you're going at the early stages, that's not what you're trying to get, or that's not even what you're trying to optimize for. You're just trying to place a lot of little bets that could turn into massive outcomes.
Interesting. That's a much different perspective. 30% return investing in a company that's doing 200K in ARR seems like the smallest return ever. I look at our business and I'm like, people invested at a million ARR and they're seeing wild returns, right? So anyway, interesting thought. Tell me what happened. Why did you step down?
Yeah, I mean, I think we looked at like the pricing data and looked at our customer set, and it just made a lot more sense to build a PLG led product. But that's like not my specialty or my strength. That's Clinton Tyler's. And it's just like one of those that with how fast AI is moving, how fast the world is changing, it's like I can't afford to take a minute working on something that isn't giving me the full flexibility to work and develop like as an individual myself. So it's just like, hey, if we go the PLG route, our product is too complex for maybe me to make actual like product contributions to. And if it's not really like sales led, do I want to turn into like this content guy? So I don't know. It was just like one of those that it's like, I like the conviction to that I would add a lot of value without a sales led motion. And ultimately also just like they had more conviction in the PLG route. And I don't know, the AI race is also very just like real, which is just like, hey, like I actually want to be learning as much as I possibly can. And also, it's like if I'm doing that while I'm at the startup, that's also like hurting the company. So it's like I want to just spend time tinkering and figuring out like what I can build and what impact it could have. And so yeah, it's like a lot of reasons. It was like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like my strengths aligned with the direction we needed to go. I didn't want to spend the company's money on my own personal endeavors of like, hey, I want to start building random stuff. I feel like for right now, that's where I'm curious.
The investors take this. I mean, you're the CEO, you're the founder. And are they like freaking out?
It's kind of a mix of everything, just in the sense of like, I had two investors that were like, hey, dude, we both stepped away from companies and both those companies turned into $1 billion outcomes. And like, one of them was like, it's a weird thing to have like your 5-year-old come up to you and say like, hey, dad, you're not fit to be my dad anymore. But like,
Yeah.
and then it maybe being like the best thing. So it's like only one investor was upset, but largely it's just like, hey, we trust you. And if you're trust and like you really believe in this decision, then we're going to trust you the way that we've trusted you with everything up until this point.
Yeah.
But then also too, like, all the investors are like, hey, like, we invested in 100 companies this year and 90 of them already didn't work out. So this is just like another one of the 90 that it's not that it hasn't worked out, but like getting a call like this is still better than being like, hey, we're out of money and we're dead.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think like only one investor was like genuinely upset, but everyone else was just like, sounds good.
Do you know what you're doing now? Are you tinkering with things? Do you have a direction you want to go?
You know what? I don't know. It's interesting because like yesterday was probably the most exciting day at Twitter for me because I tweeted about an idea at 11 o'clock that then Andre tweeted about like the same idea, but 11 hours
Mm.
later. And I was like, I beat you and it's timestamp. Um, I don't know. Cause like one of the thoughts I was wrestling with in the shower, which is, okay, so my Whoop that I use for like my fitness, it tells me every single day, like it's not personalized enough for what I want to accomplish. Okay. So he talked about like is the future like AI native CLI apps that like because I tweeted and I was like, hey, who's building a wearable that's one goal is getting me the most sensors and data possible, and then lets me build the interface that I want for my outcome and what I'm trying to optimize for. But then as I stood back, I'm like, okay, but the average American is super lazy. Like, does LeBron James want to sit there and be like, here's what I'm trying to optimize for? Probably not. So, like, how do you not end up just building software again? It's like, I do understand that, like, I wanted a personalized Whoop, but like Andre talked about how he wanted to like decrease his resting heart rate. And so he like vibe coded something that took all his Apple Health data and like helped him do it. And he was like, well, this app doesn't belong on the App Store, but if this is the future, how like who's building this type of like AI native like CLI for your personal health data? But it's like hard because it's like a if you look at like the tech industry broadly, it's like my wife just talked to one of her coworkers at her old company, and she asked her, she's like, "Oh, hey, how have you guys been using AI agents?" And she was like, "We haven't been." So like if even like the majority of the tech world is still struggling to adopt AI, does the average consumer ever want to vibe code their own fitness interface for their specific outcome and situation? The answer is probably no. But then if the average consumer never wants to optimize and build their own, but that's what they want, how do they get it knowing that it's possible? So how
Mhm.
do you like accomplish someone wanting a very personalized outcome based on their Whoop data with the fact that they never want to build that themselves? And they probably would really struggle to. Like even just now, like as you and I've been having these conversations, there was like 5 tests that just failed on the product I'm building. And I was like, I was telling Claude, I'm like, hey, go and fix this, go and fix this. And so like, does the average person want to sit with Claude code opening, being like, fix this, go fix this, fix it, So I'm trying to like wrestle with that idea of like, what is the future of you can build anything, but your average person does not want to.
Yeah.
You kind of end back at software, which is
Yep.
just, oh, well, now I'm going to build a workflow that's just even more customizable. Like, what are you optimizing for? Weight loss, this. And it's like, okay, so then you're just like building software again anyway.
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's like something I've been like trying to figure out. I don't know.
So you long software now?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know because like I don't want Whoop telling me what my software should look like.
Yeah.
But for the average American, they are. And I would say this is probably like a mistake I probably made most as a founder is like thinking that everyone thinks the way I do, because the reality is like they don't. Like, so for example, like Row, Row will literally buy you like an 8-seat mattress and give you 5 grand just to move your bank account. Now, we had some investors and some people that were like, why don't you just offer crazy things to invest to like founders to sign up for your platform? And I was like, well, I don't want to buy my revenue because like I feel like at some point the ticking time bomb goes off
Mhm.
and you're either going to have that with 10 million in ARR and then you raise enough money and then you're hoping that you can fix it, or you do it at 200K in ARR, but you're not like, answering to a board who's going to like fire you if you mess up. And so I don't know. I think like, I don't know if I'm long software or not in general, but I know that people are really lazy. And now you have the ability. I mean, I'm still surprised. Like again, you talk to your average person, and they're still not using chat efficiently.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's crazy to me. So it's like I don't know. But then all of a sudden, it's like, but if the future is like you have an Optimus robot who can auto like optimize things, and it can actually plug in and say, hey, I'm going to build this for my family. What does that look like? So should I actually be thinking of a way of how can I build software that Optimus reviewing my house daily would build to make his life easier because his job's to make my life. So I don't know. It's just like, is the future Optimus is constantly writing things or what?
Well, cool, man. I feel like we've had an awesome conversation. I've loved it. We should get lunch sometime for sure.
Yeah, dude, let's do it, man. Whenever you want to hang out, let me know. I'm pretty flexible these days. And yeah, it's been fun following you on Twitter. So let's just stay connected and let's connect soon.
Thanks, Renato. Appreciate the time. This is super fun.
Okay. Thanks, Nate. Take care, man. Bye.